We're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Bright Spots. I am your host, Happiness Ambassador Laurie Labishak. It is so good to see you this evening. Thank you for joining. It has been a crazy week so far, and there is a lot going on in our world, but we are going to spread our light tonight, and we are going to talk with one of the Ohio Valley's bright spots. If you are tuning in this evening, please be sure and drop a message down below. Let us know where you are. And if this is your first time tuning into Bright Spots, we'd love to know that as well. Remember, this is an interactive show. So if you've got questions for our guests, please be sure and ask them, and we will do our best to answer them. Either questions for our guest or for me. Tonight's guest is Pete Fernbaugh, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him later. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about a quote that I found. And this was from Mother Teresa. And it says, "Spread love everywhere you go. Let no one ever come to you without leaving happier." Isn't that an awesome thought? What if everyone we came in touch with, we made happier? That is an incredible thought, isn't it? So do you tell jokes? I'm a terrible joke teller. I am absolutely terrible. My husband's laughing at me right now. So I can usually remember half of the joke, and it's usually not the punchline. So I don't tell jokes because I'm just not good at it. But I love stories, and I love sharing positive stories with people. And I love talking about the good things in life and shining the light, right? That's what we're here to do, is to shine our light on all of those around us. So my challenge for you this week is absolutely to shine your light. Good morning or good evening, my friend Tony Mugianas. Thank you for tuning in. It's good to see you. So that's the way you do it, folks. Did you see Tony posted and let us know he's here? Please let us know you're here and that you are watching Bright Spots this evening. So again, remember, shine your light. That's why we were put in this world, is to make it a brighter place. And don't feed into negativity. Negative people, if you surround yourself with negative people, they have problems for every solution, right? I believe Albert Einstein said that. So don't surround yourself with negativity. Surround yourself with positive people who are shining their light and encourage you to shine your light. We are so excited that you've decided to join us tonight. And again, we have a great guest this evening. I'm going to look at my monitor here and see if I can tell who is in the house, because we have a few other people in the house. And I am really excited. We're trying to let you log on because we don't want to bring our guest on until there is an audience for him to speak to. Melissa Greco, good to see you. And Linda Cummins from the newspaper, glad to see you here as well. So folks, please comment, let us know you're here. And again, if this is your first time watching, we want to know about that. We want to know that you are here. So I'm going to introduce our guest now. Mr. Pete Fernbaugh has been involved in theatrical pursuits since he was a teenager. He started acting in and writing skits and plays for churches back in the late 90s. Then he began pursuing the stage during his senior year at West Liberty University. He has been involved with local theaters and dinner theater groups in the tri-state area since 2007. In 2015, he became the artistic director of the Ohio Valley Cloak and Dagger Company, which was primarily known for its original interactive murder mysteries. However, in September of 2017, the troupe began a monthly theatrical series, Cloak and Dagger on the Air, a live production that specializes in the art of radio drama and presents fully produced stories both old and new, from all genres, complete with sound effects and music. Cloak and Dagger on the Air is currently available as a podcast on the Anchor.fm platform. The show has adapted to the current crisis by producing episodes remotely using Zoom. Pete lives in Weirton with his beautiful wife Bethany and 3 cats, Rory, Alexandra, and Theo. So without further ado, welcome to our guest, Mr. Pete Fernbaugh. Hey, Pete.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am doing great. It is so good to see you
It's great
and
to see
have you as a guest on our show. So I will tell you that Pete has been a good friend of my daughter for many years. And I think the first time I met Pete was when you played the Beast in Beauty and the Beast.
The first time I acted with Micah was in 2009. I believe maybe it was 2008. Towngate did a production of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And she was Lucy and I was Linus. And that was the first time I met her. And yeah, we've been friends ever since. And yes, I did play the Beast opposite her. Both shows directed by Tim Thompson, whom you had on a few weeks ago.
So I was thinking that Charlie Brown was after Beauty and the Beast, but okay, so Charlie Brown was first and then Beauty and the Beast. So Ralph Parisi has joined the broadcast. Hi, Ralph. Good to see you. He says hi, Pete, and hi, Laurie. We have both worked with Ralph, so that is that's fun. Ralph, we might have to bring you on the broadcast, bring you into the studio. So it is really great to see Stacy Lynn Plummer has joined and Frank O'Brien. Thank you for joining us. Please make a comment. And if you have a question for Pete about Cloak and Dagger on the Air, please be sure and ask us that. So Pete, why a radio show? A live radio show.
A live radio show, yeah. It's live-ish. We record it live, and then we release it as a podcast later. But that goes back many years to the 80s when most kids were being raised with TV shows. My parents didn't have a TV. They got rid of it when I was like 2. I still remember how devastating that day was because I looked out the window and I saw our TV waiting for the trash, and the various reasons why they decided to get rid of it. And so the only recourse for that was radio, and we listened to a lot of Christian radio in our house. And although radio drama on secular stations had ended or been relegated to late night reruns by that time, Christian radio was very strong in regard to radio dramatic productions. So I grew up with a few radio dramas that were broadcast daily serialized radio dramas, much like you would hear about in the 30s and 40s kids growing up with. I believe there were stories of great Christians, and then they'd adapt Christian youth novels such as the Sugar Creek Gang for radio. So I would listen to these religiously. And then in 1987, I discovered a show called Adventures in Odyssey, which absolutely captured my imagination. And I fell in love with the whole format of the show, which was very family oriented, but it wasn't your cookie cutter Christian show. They really went out of their way to present different types of stories, all that were written up. I even as a kid, I hated to be written down to. I always liked shows that were written up and expected me to be more intelligent. And Odyssey was one of those. And that a lot of the actors on Odyssey had been in old time radio. And so I wanted to, being curious, I wanted to find out who they were. And so I'd find out, this is Hal Smith, or this is Parley Bear, or some of the great actors they had on there, and that would connect me to some old radio shows. And and then someone in one of my dad's churches, my dad was a pastor, he gave me a couple of cassettes of old radio shows, The Shadow and Abbott and Costello. I became enamored of them. And then the next logical step was the library. And then the next logical step was, they're still airing these on TV or on radio. And so I'd find the late night reruns, and 1430 here in Weirton used to air when radio was every afternoon. And I'd make my poor mom tape it for me. And all of that, I fell in love with radio. I had a time when I loved talk radio too. We won't go there. And then there was a Prairie Home Companion on NPR that I discovered, in Car Talk, and I just fell in love with the medium. And I had it in my head that I wanted to go into the entertainment industry. I wanted to act. I wanted to write. I wanted to direct. I had interest in TV and theater and all that. But in the back of my head, there was always this fascination with radio drama. And the more I listened to the stuff from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the more I was like, I'd love to do stories like this. In fact, there are some of these stories I'd love to do. When I connected with the theater community locally, I would even from the very beginning, I'd be thinking, Nancy Longo, she'd be great in Sorry, Wrong Number, or so-and-so would be great in this particular drama. So in about 2016, I think it was, Jeffrey Holmes, who used to run Striplight Community Theater, he was doing a festival, and he said, do you have anything that we could, fill out this half-hour time slot with? And I said to him, well, I could do an old radio show. And he goes, that's great. And it was received pretty well by the audience. It was received really well, actually. I remember we started off with like 5 or 6 people in the audience, and by the end, there were like 25, 30 people. That's the story I'm going to tell. There was actually a dance troupe on after us. So I think they were all coming in for the dance troupe, but they still saw the end of it, and they seemed to really like it. And it just got me thinking, what if I did this on a regular basis, but I didn't do anything with it until the fall of 2017, when I was doing another fundraiser for Striplight, and Alicia Ford and Pat Ford, who used to be the director of the small business organization here in Weirton, they were in the audience that night, and Pat loved it so much that he said to Alicia, they need to do this every month. And so Alicia tracked me down, and she said, you need to do this every month. And I said, well, I've wanted to do it every month. And then it just kind of started to fall in place. She got sponsors for us, local sponsors, and I came up with this really weird idea of not just mentioning them as sponsors, but doing whole skits that would build up to sponsoring their business or product, and the outlandish comedic skits, because I wanted to break up the drama a little bit with a little bit of levity. And she loved it. Our sponsors seemed to love it. And so it became a monthly thing. A friend of mine, Dave Zaneski, he said, hey, can I put this on my podcast? I said, sure. And it just kind of all fell into place. And here we are about 3.5, almost 4 years later. And I've got a regular troupe. I've got actors locally who are passionate about it. I've got actors who want to be in the show. And I'm just very grateful for how it's grown.
Wow, that's a great story, Pete. And I love hearing about how it started. And I've attended a couple of the shows, and they're so entertaining and they're so engaging. And I love that you use local actors, and you see people up there on the stage, and it's not like going to see a play, because they're basically just reading it, but using emotion, just like the old radio shows. It's just really, it's really, really great. So
the unique thing is I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the unique thing about it is when people hear about it, they're like, oh, it's Reader's Theater. And I say, kind of. But when then they come and they see the difference between Reader's Theater, and if you close your eyes, and I'll look out in the audience sometimes, and people will close their eyes and just let it all kind of meld together within their brains, within the theater, their imagination. And it's amazing how it comes together, because you're right. They're reading from a script we don't memorize, but you get to see the same actors. We do about 2 to 3 stories each episode. And you get to see the actors. The last live episode we did was February 29th, and John Riley was in it. And he played an older man who went back in time as his younger version of himself. And then he played, in our sketch, he played a drunk host of a stuffy British masterpiece theater type show. And then he played a scientist in the last episode. And in between, he played you get to see actors really show off their range. And that's one of the coolest things for me to see. Ralph is in them too.
I actually listened to that episode, and
Yeah.
it's amazing to hear the actor change from one persona to the next. It really shows their diversity as an actor. And so we have a question from Mr. Ralph Parisi, and he asks, does Pete prefer to act or direct?
I love I would say I love both. I think the way I would answer that is to say, one, the performing informs the directing and vice versa. Some shows, for example, last year we did Mamma Mia together, you, myself, and Ralph, and I looked at the script at the beginning. I really didn't see a place for myself in the show. And I thought to myself, maybe I'll just step behind the scenes. So there are some times where I look at a script and I'm like, I don't really want to see myself in this, or I don't really see a place for myself. This is something I just want to do behind the scenes. And so that's a hard question, because I really love performing, but I feel if you only perform and never direct, especially if you do theater all the time, you miss out on certain important pieces of information. Like, what is the director thinking? It really helps as an actor to understand what the director is going through when he's putting a show together, as opposed to just you and your character. And I think as a director, it helps to put yourself in the shoes of one actor and to remind yourself of the process of building that character. So I like to do both. I think they inform both. And maybe it's just my, auteur entrepreneur mentality, but I've always kind of had a hand in a couple different pies for most productions. Not all the time, but a lot of my own I do. And so that's a really good question and a really tough question. I find they both inform me, and whether I prefer to perform or direct really depends on the show. I hope that made sense. That felt like a muddled answer.
No, I think that made perfect sense. And the second part of that is, what part of production do you enjoy the most?
That's a great question too. I'll tell you what part. I'll start with what part I hate the most, or dislike the most, not hate. My least favorite part is, so if we're doing a stage show, my least favorite part is the read-through and the blocking. And then my second least, so I would say the early part of the production phase, when you're blocking and you're trying to get off book. Once you're off book and you have your lines, then I feel that's when the creativity starts. So I really enjoy that middle part leading up to Tech Week, where you're building your character and you're discovering things and you're making choices and you're discovering new intentions. And if you're like me, and there are quite a few actors that I know who never really stop building their characters even when the show goes up. When it comes to the radio dramas, my favorite part is the actual performance itself, because I always gain a new appreciation for the people I collaborate with, because I realize how skilled they are and how much I can trust them. And as you heard in that episode you listened to, Laurie, amazing things happen in the course of a live production, because we're not living with those scripts very long. We only have 2 or 3 rehearsals, 4 max. And so they have to make decisions quickly. And so I do a lot of trusting the actor to come up with their own intentions and motivations. I give very little direction. I trust them to be thinking and creating on their own. And so I enjoy seeing that whole package come together. So that's and I've done a little film, not a lot, but film, I enjoy that, because you can focus on one scene, and then when they call cut, that's a wrap, that scene's done, and then you move on to the next scene. And I guess I'm a maven for performance. I like a lot of different mediums, and I like the challenges they each bring.
Cool. That's really awesome. So, folks, if you're just tuning in, this is Bright Spots, a weekly show that highlights bright spots in the Ohio Valley and beyond. We would love your questions. Tonight's guest is Pete Fernbaugh of Cloak and Dagger on the Air, and we would love to know what you want to know. So please drop us a line down below. Ask Pete a question or ask me a question. This is open season for Pete and Laurie, so feel free to ask us whatever you like. And
that's my fault.
So Pete, we've been going through some crazy times right now, and has the pandemic changed you? And if so, how?
Oh, that's another great question. I'm not sure I know how it's fully changed me. I know Bethany and my wife Bethany and I have talked about this. It's made us reevaluate how we're spending our time. It's made us realize that we do value having evenings, which is evenings when you're in theater, because we're all doing it on a mostly volunteer basis. It's easy to fritter away evenings in the theater. Not fritter away, but you can do one show after another, and before you know it, half a year's gone and you haven't been home much. And I think when all of this passes, as it will, I think we're going to try to be a little bit better about balancing our commitments. And it's not just theater that we commit to. We have a host of things that we get involved in. So I think we're going to try to be a little wiser. I think the other thing that this has made me value is the importance to take time to breathe. I was telling you before we came on the air, before all of this went down, we were looking at, Bethany was actually rehearsing for the Brighton Beach Memoirs at Towngate, and they were about to go into their tech week. In fact, the 20th, I believe the show was going to start, and everything got shut down on the 13th. And we were looking at some of the busiest months that we had ever had in any previous year. We were between Cloak and Dagger, a host of other commitments. We were planning to help with Little Orphan Annie at Brook Hills Playhouse. We were just looking at busyness, and we hadn't seen each other a lot. I think the week of the pandemic, I'd seen her maybe a total of 3 hours, and at home even less, because we sometimes work in the same place, so we would see each other there. But I think it's made me realize that it's important to take time to just be, and allowing time for you to work on yourself, as in addition to working and volunteering and being creative. You need to allow time to let yourself grow personally. You need that quietness. You need time to read. You need time to pursue hobbies. You need time to just sit and enjoy. This morning, I sat out on my porch and I just enjoyed how beautiful it was this morning. And you need time to do that. And I really think that's how the pandemic has changed me. Because before I'd be able to be like, yeah, I need to take more time, but then it'd be, okay, what's my next project? So I think that's where it's kind of changed me. It's changing me, changing how I look at time and how I need to use it for personal growth.
A guest earlier this month said we've got to remember to put the oxygen mask on ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way to put it.
And so often when we're involved in so many things, we forget that. We're as a director. I mean, I watched last year when we did Mamma Mia. I watched you take care of everyone, all of the actors, and make sure everybody was where they needed to be when they needed to be, and understood their parts and stretched themselves into their role. I know you helped me do that as an actor, and And it was great fun, and it was a lot of work. And it took me 14 years to do it again, and I might be another 14 years before I do it again. But just so much fun. And Pete, I hope someday we get the opportunity to share the stage as actors. I enjoyed having you as a director, but I think I would enjoy acting alongside of you as well.
Thank you.
So, folks, we are going to take a real quick break and let you see what's coming up in the next few weeks on Bright Spots. This is a weekly show every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Get your questions and your comments ready for our guest, and take a moment to see what's coming up next. All right, so we've got some fun shows planned, and today I confirmed that we have one more show that is not in the preview video. On July the 8th, Dale Smith-Thomas, a nationally recognized motivational speaker who has spoke here locally a couple of times, is also going to join us on Bright Spots. So excited that Dale is free to join us. And I know that you will enjoy her light and the light of all of our guests as they shine here on Bright Spots. So, Pete, talking about professionally, as you transitioned your professional life to working from home, I know you had mentioned you were substitute teaching, and of course, when school got canceled, that changed. But you do have some other things that you work from home. Was that new for you, or are you used to working from home? And how did you adapt to using technology, the Zoom meetings? I know that you mentioned you're now doing the radio show with Zoom. So how was that? How did you transition into that? And is that something that you will carry past the pandemic?
That's another great question. So I've worked as a standardized patient educator for the University of Pittsburgh Office of Medical Education. In academia, it's always long titles. You got to always include a bunch of different departments. Basically, what I do is I work with medical students in simulated settings. The reference point a lot of people have is the Seinfeld episode with Kramer, but it's a lot more involved than that. Although that episode's hilarious. I work with them on a variety of, sometimes it's just physical exams, but a lot of times it's helping them develop their patient interview skills, their bedside manner, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was interesting because they had to figure out at the drop of a hat how to transition all of that to online, because they had to keep their medical students moving forward in their education. And so that was interesting to be a part of. And some of the stuff I've done, though, I've always worked from home to one degree or another. In recent years, it's been less than more. But for a while there, I was working at home on a consistent basis. So I had just said to Bethany at the beginning of the year, man, I'd love to go back to working from home. So here we are. Is it something that Oh, and of course, with Cloak and Dagger, that was, I couldn't, when I realized this was going to be a long-term thing and I was going to have to cancel the remainder of our season. Normally, we take a hiatus in July and August. And when I realized that not even being able, I was thinking, okay, I'll just move the season until July and August. And then I started to realize we may not be back until the fall. I couldn't just let our theater troupe remain dormant for so many months. So I decided I wanted to start doing half-hour versions of our show. And so essentially studio recordings without a live audience. And so I was like, well, I've heard about this crazy technology called Zoom. The interesting thing is I'd never heard of Zoom But about a week before the pandemic hit, or before the lockdowns hit, I had done a charity event um, for Impacted Incorporated in Washington, and one of the actors couldn't make it to a lot of the rehearsals, and so she said to me, "You know what? I could still rehearse with you. Have you heard of Zoom?" And I said, "I've never heard of Zoom. What is it?" And she explained it to me, and so we rehearsed over Zoom with her and prepared her for that show. And then suddenly 2 weeks later, all I'm hearing about is Zoom, 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 and now I'm on Zoom several times a week. So that's something that I find very interesting. Will I carry it post-pandemic? I'm not sure. I'm interested to see how the medical school uh, handles their program. I'm not sure we'll be back with the students this summer. Still waiting to hear about that. I know they're now realizing that they need to do some more training in telemedicine encounters. So I think that's going to be an added component to the program. As far as recording Cloak and Dagger on the air, Zoom has some limitations with quality, but what I've gained from this and from doing this tonight, it's been interesting learning about StreamYard, is there are ways to record people remotely without having to bring them into a studio. So that's been very helpful information for me. And I think I will continue doing that with Cloak and Dagger on the air in some capacity, in addition to our live shows.
Awesome. Working in the hospital, of course, we have transitioned all of our meetings to, we use WebEx as opposed to Zoom.
Right.
And I've used a lot of different platforms over the years, and they're all pretty similar. StreamYard, of course, is specifically made for broadcasting to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I mean, it'll broadcast just about anywhere. And I'm not doing a commercial for StreamYard, but it is a great platform for that. If you would like to learn more about that, I'm happy to share.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because it has been a great platform for me for bright spots and my music, and so it's a cool platform to use. So, what do you think will change with the delivery of creative arts as the world begins to open up, and we're allowed to have smaller groups together? Do you foresee theaters and even the Cloak and Dagger group doing smaller venues and having, or larger venues with smaller crowds, I guess, with social distancing? Is that what we think we're going to look at? Maybe multiple productions with smaller crowds, or do you think that we won't see that this summer? Do you think it'll be longer than that?
Well, the sad thing in all of this is, when will theaters be able to start live productions again? And I know some theaters are planning August productions, some are planning September productions, but once again, that's up in the air. I think what this has done is it's forced theater companies to look at how they really need to engage with modern technology in the delivery, in some capacity, of their offerings. I think that it's forced a lot of theaters into the 21st century. It's interesting that you say what you say about smaller productions. When you're dealing with local theater, there are a lot of times when local theater tries to be Broadway. And there's a meme that goes around in theater groups where, what the actors in community theater see, and of course it's a Broadway production, what the audience sees, and of course it's a community production, and what your parents see, or something to that effect. And with Mamma Mia last summer, I remember one of the things that Emily Juarez, who was the co-director, the main director, and we realized when we got into the Brook Hill spaces, there is no way we can do a big version of this show, which is what people expect. And I kept saying, this isn't, our version of Mamma Mia is going to be a black box theater version, a smaller, scaled down theatrical version of the show. And I think that the more community theater can embrace the fact that we are community and we're limited by budget, by resources, not always by talent, but sometimes by talent. I think the more we can recognize that, I think what this might do is help us to start thinking about scaling our productions to what we actually are. Whether that means smaller audiences, I don't know, because one of the things that there are so many variables here as to how the pandemic's affecting us, and one of them is, how's it affecting us psychologically? I know a lot of people right now, they just want to get back to it. So we see a lot of guidelines being thrown aside, and people are going to parties, and of course, you know, what's going on in the country this week, and it's like the social distancing guidelines don't exist anymore. But psychologically, will audiences want to come into a 100-seat theater and sit next to each other, with definitely not 6 feet apart, if you've been in most of the theaters in the area? So that is to be determined. But I don't see that. One thing that West Liberty University has done with its few of its shows is they've limited the size of their audiences depending on the production. So this show will only be for 25 people per show. And it emphasizes the intimacy of theater, which plays to community theater's strength. So on one hand, we need the ticket sales from a lot of people. But at the same time, I think having only 25, 30 people in the audience, or 50 people, plays to community theater's strengths. It creates that intimacy that you don't get in a Broadway theater, or all Broadway theaters. So that's what I'm interested to see. I think it all depends on how long this goes on, and I think it all depends on how people are psychologically affected by this. If throwing aside the guidelines and going out and acting like things are normal again, and we don't get a second wave and things subside and it washes over us, great. I'm not sure there will be much impact. It'll be just like, oh, remember that time in March of 2020? And yeah, that was wild. Yeah, that was crazy. But I think there's a lot to be determined. But I would not be upset if we started to emphasize the intimacy of community theater, because that's really our strength. That's really the strength of local theater, is the smallness of it. Which is totally against the American psyche, by the way. We want big productions and hundreds of people watching us, but Cloak and Dagger usually only has about 25 people in the audience, and it'd be nice to have more, but I kind of prefer it that way. It makes things, because I always want to create that living room feel, and you can't do that with 100 people. So
true. I guess, some of the positives are that we are not seeing a spike now, as people are, the world is reopening as we can, and as our governors permit us to. There hasn't been a spike, which is good. I'm of the belief that if we protect the most vulnerable, our elders and those who are immune suppressed, that we won't see that spike. Of course, I'm not a scientist, and so I that's just Laurie's thoughts on the subject.
Where Bethany and I have fallen on that is, so we're still practicing the social distancing, staying in, but we're naturally homebodies, so that's not hard for us to do. I have a friend, and she, as soon as the regulations were loosened, she went hog wild. She was doing this and going here and going there, but that's her. And so what Bethany and I have talked about is, it comes down to mutual respect. So if there's someone who, within the limits that are still set, they want to do a lot of stuff, that's fine. Don't judge them. And if there are people who are like us, a little more cautious, don't judge them either. It's everyone's comfort level that I think is important in this time.
I agree 100%. I think you have to do what makes sense for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we do have another question, and it's to
Oh,
both of
good.
us, and it's again from Mr. Parisi.
Oh,
So the question is, what do both of you miss more about pandemic life?
about pre-pandemic life.
Pre-pandemic
Uh,
life. Sorry.
no,
Yeah.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Do you want to take that first?
Sure. I can take it first. So for me, I I'm usually very very busy out. As a professional musician, this is usually the time of the year that we're out getting started with our music and doing stuff and having shows. And so I miss that. I miss seeing my sweetheart sisters that I sing with, because we have not been together since February when we did our Valentine's show. So I truly miss that. I miss the harmony of my girlfriends. I also miss um, I miss eating out with my husband. Now, Mike and I have been empty nesters now for some time, and we tend to eat out more than we eat in. Now, I will say that this has forced me to cook again, and I truly enjoy cooking. I have found more joy in cooking these past couple of months, mostly because I had to, but also because it kind of rekindled that love of cooking and experimenting in the kitchen that I had gotten away from. And I miss my daughter. Micah moved back a couple of years ago when she got married, and I've gotten spoiled seeing her so often. And I've seen her twice in the last couple of months, and that's hard. And she's expecting, and I want to see her grow and her belly get bigger. And I feel like by the time I see her, she's going to be holding the baby. But it's I miss that, and I'm a hugger. I miss hugs. I miss that long, wonderful hug that only a good friend can give you when you need it. And I miss giving that and receiving that. So that's what I miss the most from pre-pandemic life.
Yeah, I miss moving about life with thoughtless ease. Um, I Everything now requires a little bit of thought, such as, oh, I'm about to go to the grocery store, and you don't want to go to the grocery. Before, I would, if I needed something, I'd just stop. And now it's, oh, maybe I can wait until Sunday morning or whenever I decide to go to the grocery store. And then you have to take your mask. And yeah, it's that same with you. I didn't see my family for well over 2.5 months. And then even when you're around them, there's that hesitancy to hug. You don't, and when you have little kids, it's you kind of loosen your standards for social distancing, because you don't want to deny them the affection. So I would say moving about life with thoughtless ease. That's what that's what I miss most. Now everything requires a lot of thought.
That's a great answer. I love it. I'm gonna remember that and use that, because it is true. We do have to think about things now before we leave the house. And um, I have worked through the pandemic, so I have had human contact. My entire
Mm-hmm.
team has actually worked. There are four of us in our suite. We could social distance very easily. We're all in different offices. And so we had human contact throughout this, straight to work and straight home, no lollygagging in between, as I said before. So but it's that we would joke, so what are you going to do tonight? Well, I think I'll walk from the living room to the kitchen.
Right.
And it's those crazy. I did do some projects around the house since I've had all this free time, but you don't realize how busy you are until you're
Mm-hmm.
told you can't be.
Right.
And then it's almost like a sigh. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, wow. Yeah.
Very deep sigh. Yeah.
It's a very deep sigh. And you know what, guys? It's okay. It's okay that we weren't busy for 2 months. It's okay. The world didn't
Absolutely.
stop. Life didn't stop. It's okay. So we have another question for both of us from the beautiful and talented Bethany Fernbaugh. And she says, for both of you, what has been a positive thing that you've experienced during the pandemic? And Pete, I'll let you take this one first.
Hmm. Well, that's my wife asking, so I better say spending time with her. That actually has been a writer I follow said that. So I don't want to sound like I'm coming up with this on my own. He said that he realized how well he married because of being in the same apartment with his wife now for months on end. And I would say that that's a positive thing I've realized is how well I've married, because and I'm not saying that to suck up to her. I genuinely mean that because I hear about couples who are at each other's throats. There's that concern about, families who are divided and now having to be together under the same roof. So things are so chill in our house that I'm probably the one who stirs trouble up. And the other thing was, it's been nice to see her, how much she loves cooking. I've been a beneficiary of some great homemade meals, because she's just been exploring her cooking chops, and it's always fun to see what's for dinner that night. Because before, like you said, you guys eat out a lot. We don't have any kids, so there was always this fend for yourself mentality. And sometimes we'd eat together, sometimes it just depended on our schedule. And we've been eating dinner together, and so yeah, I love that pleasant. I knew it before that I married well, but having that confirmed has been a wonderful thing.
Well, that's awesome. And I think it's okay if you suck up to her. It's all right because she's your better half. And
Yeah,
I
better.
will echo that. I must have married well also because Mike and I have been together 39 years and married 37. And we have not been at each other's throat. We've actually had some very deep conversations, and we've had more time to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Again, because we're like two ships passing in the night a lot, busy with our own interests. And so I agree. Here is what I have seen that has been very positive. I have seen a community rise to the occasion and support their neighbors in ways that we have never seen before. And I am blessed every time I hear about young people who have checked on their elderly neighbors, or, got their grocery list and shopped for them, or picked up their medicines at the drugstore and delivered them so that they didn't have to go out and be exposed. Um, I think it's incredible to see how our neighbors have stepped up, working at the hospital and receiving phone calls practically every week from local businesses wanting to feed the frontline workers. I've seen nurses that have taken on extra shifts because other nurses are homesick or taking care of loved ones. Seeing the way that people have really just risen to the occasion and taken care of those around them. That has been one of the most positive things that I have seen, not just here locally, but across the country.
Yeah.
It has been amazing how we have really bonded together as a nation through the pandemic and supported one another. That will be my go-to positive thing, I think,
Yeah.
out of this whole
I,
experience.
I just I just am not sure. The It was Memorial Day when the New York Times published an editorial, and I was so grateful to see someone finally do this. Their editorial board, their editorial for that day was "Thank you, Americans," and they were like, "We don't say it enough. How much people have, exactly what you said, risen to the occasion," and I was so grateful to see that because I don't know about you, but I've had to take a break from the news. at
Yes.
times during all of this, because it's just been an onslaught of toxicity and negativity, and feeling bad about myself. And I'm like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and still contributing. So I totally agree with you. I think we're stronger than we believe we are. And I think, not to get specific, but even this week is starting to prove we're stronger than we realize we are.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, folks, this is Mr. Pete Fernbaugh, and he is our guest on Bright Spots this evening. He is with Ohio Valley Cloak and Dagger, and this is their place on Facebook. So if you would like to know more about Cloak and Dagger on the air, please look for them on Facebook, like their page, take a listen to some of their podcasts. There's lots of really cool stuff happening with Cloak and Dagger, and I think as the world begins to open up and they can do their live radio shows again, you're going to want to check that out. You're going to want to be a part of that. So, Pete, what if people want to be involved in Cloak and Dagger? Do you do call outs for actors, or is it kind of a closed club?
No, actually, I auditioned somebody last week. It's a little slow going now, because we're doing everything remotely, and so a lot depends on your on internet connections and all that. But I will give anyone an audition, even if you don't hear from me. I told the gentleman I auditioned last week, I said, you may not hear from me for a little while, but I loved your audition, and I definitely want you to be a part of future shows. So definitely reach out to me. There are area actors I haven't gotten to yet. If it's something that you're interested in and you haven't heard from me, please don't take that personally. I have a great team around me, but a lot of the production effort, post-production especially, is on me, and that consumes a lot of my time in addition to my other responsibilities. So sometimes attention to, I'll hear so-and-so would like to be a part of it, and I'll be like, okay, that's great. I'll have to reach out to them, and then I forget about it. So just shoot me a message on Facebook, reach out to me via the Cloak and Dagger page. We definitely do auditions. I don't necessarily hold open call auditions, but if someone comes up to me and says, hey, I'd like to be a part of this, I go, absolutely. And I urge people to always go to our podcast, which you can find through our Facebook page, or if you just go to anchor.fm, you can find it on there, or if you subscribe to Spotify, you can find it on there. Cloak and Dagger on the air. Listen to it, make sure it's something you want to be a part of, something you enjoy. I think all the actors involved in it, and I'd like, before we go, I'd like to give a shout out to a few of the people who have really helped me make this a thing. But I think a lot of it's easy to take for granted the complexity of what we do. It's simple, but it's complex. And so just take a listen to it, see if it's something you want to be a part of, and then reach out to me. I will give anyone an audition. I would also urge people beyond my theater troupe, audition for Brook Hills Playhouse, audition for The Strand, audition for Towngate Theater. Reach out to Butch Maxwell. He runs Murder Mystery Unlimited. There's Little Lake in Canonsburg if you live close to there. There's Washington Community Theater. There's Strip Light Community Theater here in Weirton. There are theaters in Pittsburgh that will more than gladly give you opportunities. So I would urge, if you want to get involved in theater of any kind, just when everyone jumps back into the game, start looking for those auditions. Auditions and At is a great page to look at. Sometimes just going to their websites, the theater's websites and such. But I would say, there are a lot of creative people in this valley, in this tri-state area, doing creative things, and we all have one common thing that we need, and that's talented people. And one of my favorite things to do is give people who may never have taken an acting class, may never have gone to college for acting, but have a natural talent for it. I love to give them an opportunity. We've had a few people in Cloak and Dagger who have they've not really done a lot of it before, and they started auditioning locally, and they're wonderful talents. I think of Justin Sawyer, who's known at Towngate. I think of Chris Carter, who worked with Strip Light and now works with me, and Noah Hilton. There's a lot of opportunity out there for those latent talents. So if you sit back at night and you're watching TV and you're like, man, I'd like to act. And you find yourself, because this is what I would do. I'd watch TV and I'd be like, man, I'd like to act. I'd go to a show and I'd be like, I'd love to be up there. I always wanted to be up there. I didn't want to be in the audience. And there are opportunities for you to be up there. So if you find yourself doing that, reach out to the artistic directors in the Valley. We're always looking for people.
That's great. And like I said, I've done 2 plays in my life, 2 musicals. I've done 1 regular play and 2 musicals. And I know 14 years in between, but it's okay. So age is not a deterrent, guys. No matter your age, if it's something you've always wanted to do, it is the most fun I've ever had. I will say that. It is absolutely the most fun. And, you sometimes get to be a character that you would never be in real life, which is really fun. You can step outside your comfort zone, I guess, and surprise people.
One of my happiest days as a director was when you said you'd play Tanya, because I knew you wanted to be Donna, and I understand that. If I were a mother, that would be the role that I'd be looking at. But when you auditioned last year for Mamma Mia, I was like, oh, Laurie, I hate to tell you this, but you're more a Tanya.
I was like, there's no way I'm a Tanya.
Oh yeah, it was a joy to work with you. That show I was not a fan of that show going into it. I love ABBA. I'm a pop music fiend, but I love ABBA, but I wasn't a fan of the show. But what you guys did with that show, and once again, it was because we had to be intimate with it. We had to focus on the characters, and you guys did a wonderful job with it. And seeing you grow as a performer was amazing.
Yeah,
you and Noah.
It was fun. Noah was a blast. So we're getting close to the end of the broadcast. So if you have any questions for Pete before we head out, please be sure you ask those. But Pete, I would like to ask, what is your favorite role that you've ever played?
Oh, it was Linus up until I played Gomez Adams for the Addams Family. This is a couple summers ago. And Gomez everyone laughs at me because I slip right back into Gomez. It doesn't take much. And I love that character because I was never sure if he was putting it on, if the debonair act was just an act, or if that's who he really was, or if it was both. I was never sure if he was really Spanish or if he was just faking was the accent. I was never quite sure. And that made it fun for me, because I did it at Brook Hills. I did it with Emily and a lot of the people I work with now. And it was so freeing, because he's not someone who I am on a daily basis in life, but he's someone who's inside of me, who I wish I could be. And then I was able to be him. I was able to be wacky and goofy, but also tender and romantic. And that's my favorite role of all time.
And you got to play opposite of Bethany, your beautiful wife. So that had to be fun as well.
It was. Bethany and I do a lot of theater together, and there's a controversial thought about whether spouses should act together and should do theater together. But so far, we really haven't had a problem. We're 2 different types of performers. No matter how much preparation I do for it, I tend to still, I never do the same thing twice. And she's very methodical and everything's very thought out. We just are 2, but we blend well, I think. Yeah. And she's incredibly, she's more talented than I am. She has a beautiful voice, and she's a great dancer, and yeah, she's awesome. She's also integral. A few other names just throw out that I want to thank for
Absolutely,
Dagger.
you go for it.
Carissa Martin, she runs our sound effects team, the Holy Foley Molies. I can't take credit for that name. She and Noah Hilton came up with it. Lakin Weaver, Roberta Fadausch, also Carissa. They take different turns doing the music. We try to do original music or classical type music, public domain music for our scores. We always try to have a live score. There's Ralph. He's become an integral member of our group. Bob Gaudio, most people know him as RJ Gaudio Troubadour. John Riley, Micah, your daughter, and Alfred, Nancy Longo, Rob DeSantis. I've just been blessed to be surrounded by so many people, and that's another thing I'd say to anyone who wants to get involved in theater. Never make it about you. Remember, it's as much of a team sport as basketball is, as football is. It's never just about you. Even when one actor gets more attention than other actors in the show, even when some actors aren't necessarily meant for lead roles, they're still just as important, because those ensemble and supporting roles are just as important. So I would remind people to go into it with a team mentality, and when you realize that it's a collaboration and nothing happens in a vacuum, your creative soul can soar, and that's when it starts to grow, and that's when all of this hard work becomes fun and fulfilling.
Oh, sorry about that. Fine. I meant to put us both up there. My production fingers got confused.
Fire your producer.
That's right. You're fired. Okay. Pete, I am so thankful that you could join us tonight on Bright Spots, and we've gone a little bit over on our time this evening, but that's okay. It has been a delight, and I so much enjoyed your conversation, and thank you for freewheeling it. I think that was just a fun way to do tonight. A little outside my comfort zone, but that's okay. It worked. It worked very well. And we've got one quick comment from Miss Deb Gilchrist. Thank you, Deb, for joining us tonight, and we're glad you enjoyed the show. And Pete, I'm going to bid you adieu. Thank you so much. Please come back and again sometime when you're ready to go back to live shows. We would love to have you back on and talk about that, and learn more about what you're doing. And as theater gets back to life, we definitely want to know more about what's going on.
Absolutely, and it will. The way Towngate is framing it is, this is just intermission. The second act will get started before long. So I think that's a great way to great analogy for it.
And so what a great way to end the show. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Bright Spots every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We'll see you next week.